More now about the U.S. missile strikes. 2 Navy warships fired nearly 60 of those Tomahawk missiles. It happened last night from the Mediterranean Sea.
They are the USS Porter, based in Spain, the USS Ross from Norfolk, Virginia. The target was an air base, which the U.S. says was used during a deadly chemical weapons attack earlier this week.
Meantime, these airstrikes could have big consequences for the United States.
Political professor Ric Epps here to break it all down for us. Rick, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Shelley. Good morning, Raul.
Why did the U.S. decide to do this attack? Why now? This kind of attack, Rick, has been going on in Syria, this fighting for years.
Yeah, the engagement in Syria has been going on for about 6 years, almost back to the days of the Arab Spring when everything sort of collapsed. But here's the interesting about this. I mean, on one hand, it's based on what happened on Tuesday, of course, with the alleged, or what appears to be a chemical attack on his own people. And if that's in fact the case, one could argue that the actions were justified because in the 2013 agreement, during the Obama administration, it was agreed that they had to get rid of all their chemical weapons. All of a sudden now, they've got chemical weapons again, which it looks like a real problem because this agreement was set up with Russia sort of overseeing it, and now it looks like, well, either Russia was complicit or knew that the Assad regime was actually developing.
But Rick, this was not the first time. I mean, there are 2 other times that there was a chemical attack like this.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, so now it looks like it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck. It's usually a duck, right? And so this is one of those things where the diplomacy seems to have failed. The president decided at this point that he wanted to take action, which was really quite contrary to just even a week ago the actions that his stance had been on Syria. And so now the actions certainly you could say were justified and warranted, but I would also say to do it in the way that he did it could be very complicated without basically talking with the allies, without basically going through the channels to make sure that diplomacy was not going to work before committing to these types of actions. It's pretty unprecedented, actually.
There's a lot of talk about the message of the airstrikes. They were very precise. They were very targeted on that one particular airfield.
Yeah.
Tell us about this operation and its intention here, because now what everybody's trying to figure out is what is exactly our long-term plan for Syria.
Yeah, well, the attack on the Syria airfield was basically to attack the point of which the chemical weapons were actually sent and launched into the city. So this was the first plan was to attack the source and attack the infrastructure, which they did. The airfields, the basic command control center, the radar, all the infrastructure right there. They did a great job. They launched 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles right into the site with very little collateral damage. I think right now the reports say 6 to 8 people were killed, which is very minimal in a situation like that. However, when you look at it, you can say yes, it gets their attention. Is it proportional in response? Probably so to some degree. Even though, let's be honest, I mean, when you look at this situation, Syria's been deteriorating for the last 6 years, and if you look at the number of people who have actually died over that period of time, it's significant in terms of the human rights violations that have already been committed. That we've kind of sit back and not done a lot with this over the last several years. So now it looks sort of interesting with ISIS on the horizon. What the next step is going to be.
And talking about being interesting, I think all eyes too are on Russia right now. How are they going to respond, and what is their role in all of this?
Well, Russia, particularly, people will say, what's in this for Russia? Why is Russia so concerned with Syria? Well, the Tarsus military naval base there is Russia's only base outside of their own country. So it's their one link to the Mediterranean, their one link to the Middle East. So it's an important and strategic base for them. So the idea that they are going to stay in relationship with the Assad regime to protect their interests there goes without saying. So so now it looks like, for example, and the concern is if the Assad regime decides to vacate the premises, and somebody else steps in, what does that mean for Russia? And Russia really can't afford to let that happen. So I think they're going to hedge their game. I don't think it's going to come to the point where we have a direct conflict, but certainly, in the version of a proxy war or destabilization, that certainly bodes to be a serious situation. The other issue here, real quickly, is the issue of ISIS. If you take apart the Assad regime and allow one of the opposition groups come to power, what do you do then? because now you've got a situation where you've got opposition groups that are also have some issues themselves internally, that if you allow one to come to power that may start to repress the other people as well, then you go back to what you started with and what we see around the rest of the region, which is instability and civil war. We wind up with Iraq again, and that's a mess. You know?
Which is why everybody is hoping that there's some sort of plan, a long-term plan, resulting from what has happened here. Ric Epps, the political professor, as we thank you once again for your expertise on this.
Thanks, all. Good to see you guys.
All right, 6:36 now. We are following.